Access to Democracy is made possible thanks to the following organizations. Sheridan & Dulas, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm that has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009. Sheridan & Dulas are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Distillery was among the first 50 microdistilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at their facility. If you're interested in learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check their website and plan a visit to tour their facility and taste their spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Access to Democracy. I'm your host, Steve Francisco. It's a real pleasure to welcome back to our studio today one of our great legal minds and a great friend of our program. He's been on numerous times, has interviewed guests on this program, and that would be former Minnesota Supreme Court Justice Paul Anderson. Paul, welcome back to Access to Democracy.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm going to be saying something a little bit out of sorts, but it was on my mind as I was walking in. You know, Alan Miller started this show.
That's right.
And he has got to be so grateful that someone like you has been willing to come in and take it over. It's hard work. It just doesn't happen, you know. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Paul. And credit to my co-host, too, Bill Raker, who does a lot of our interviews. Both Bill and I sort of split up interview duties. And you've been in this chair, too, and interviewed
guests. Oh, yeah, I have.
We hope to have you doing that again real soon,
Well, too. I have a couple of guests in mind, but I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag.
We'll save that for another time. So I understand, before we get into a very timely discussion about the current state of our law and whether we can keep the rule of law in America, I understand you have a couple of film recommendations that you want to share with our viewers.
Well, there's a new movie out, Nuremberg, and there's one that I'm going to have, another one, Judgment at Nuremberg. See, much of what's going on in society right now is similar to what went on in Nazi Germany. You know, Mark Twain says history doesn't repeat itself, but there's much of what's going on that rhymes. He says it rhymes, it doesn't repeat itself. And it's going to be important for the people to see Nuremberg, because they were holding the Nazis accountable for their acts. And then the other one would be, Nuremberg focuses on the big trials, Goering and the top goals. But they should also see Judgment in Nuremberg, because that dealt with the second tier, and there are a lot of people who are second tier that are doing a lot of evil in our society. What's interesting about Judgment in Nuremberg, the Spencer Tracy character is patterned, you know this, patterned after a Minnesota judge, former Justice William Christensen. So it's got that local tinge to it. I mean, he's just a defeated judge from Maine. Well, Christensen was a defeated justice from Minnesota. And then if you track Billy Christensen's final statement, concurrence in the Maine case, it's almost half of it in Spencer Tracy's. So
interesting.
And then,
so are you suggesting with these recommendations that we someday may see people who are doing things now in government positions that may be held accountable?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not suggesting.
Are we talking about human rights violations,
yes,
violations of American criminal law?
And people are dying. People are making decisions that are causing people to die. So there was a recent editorial. I think it was Representative from California said, start taking notes, keep track, because there will be a time that these people need to be held accountable. I'm so serious about that, because we're going to transition into the rule of law I mean, the rule of law requires that people held accountable, and they're going to have to be held accountable for the atrocities they're doing. But I'll get off that horse right now.
Let's talk about some specifics here and flesh this out further. ICE, Immigrations Customs Enforcement,
The new Gestapo?
has been.
Did I say that?
You did say that. Has been
I'm not
in the
going to
news.
retract it.
Has been in the news a lot lately and is highly controversial for the manner in which they have conducted a lot of raids around the country. ProPublica, which is an online newspaper, recently found that, quote, more than 170 U.S. citizens have been kicked, dragged, and detained for days. On November 13th, which was yesterday, a federal judge in Chicago actually ordered the release of 615 ICE detainees who are not under deportation orders and who have no outstanding arrest warrants. Basically, what this federal judge is doing is reacting to one of these sweeps where they go into a neighborhood and round up anyone that they suspect may not be in the country legally. I want to ask you about this because we have a provision in our United States Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, which is part of the Bill of Rights, which are, as we know, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution make up the Bill of Rights. Tell us, what is the Fourth Amendment and why is it relevant to what we're seeing happening right now?
I'm going to go back a bit. I was born in 1943. I was growing up in the post-World War II era, and I would read stories and hear about the atrocities and the violation of rights done by the Nazi Germany. I often wondered and always wondered where and who in America would do such dastardly deeds. I now know. ICE. They don't care about the Constitution. See, we were a very fortunate people that the drafters of our Constitution came out of the end of the Age of Enlightenment. They knew that men had to be treated under the laws, not by men. And in fact, the Constitution didn't have the 10 amendments in it when it was adopted. But it was so important. One of the first things they did was to adopt these 10 amendments which protect free speech, religion, and search and seizure. Now, why?
The Fourth Amendment specifically bans unreasonable search and seizure, and generally requires that the government have a warrant before they can arrest you.
From the court.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, there are exceptions to the warrant requirement, things like exigent circumstances and that where they can execute an arrest without a warrant, if they see a crime committed right in front of them. But generally, we have a warrant requirement, and there's something in law called probable cause. What does that mean? What does probable cause mean?
Well, I've had to deal with that concept a lot when I
know
was
you
out
have.
of the court.
Yeah.
Probable cause. 2 words. Cause. You have to have a good reason, okay? Well, you have to have a reason. But it just can't be willy-nilly. You just can't make up a reason. It has to be probable. More likely than not that there's a violation of the law. And they have to articulate what that probable cause is, because when it comes to the court, if they arrest somebody and they claim we had probable cause, and they didn't, the evidence is thrown out just to protect the citizens.
Is there sufficient probable cause when ICE goes into restaurants and factories in, say, Los Angeles or Chicago and says, we have a lot of people here who are speaking Spanish, who are brown-skinned people who may have Hispanic or Spanish-sounding surnames? Is that sufficient probable cause?
What's your last
detain
name,
them?
sir?
Francisco.
That's a suspicious name.
Yeah.
Are you?
That's why I'm asking this question.
I mean, do you have any non-Northern European heritage in your family?
Yeah.
You're suspicious.
Yeah.
To me, that's what ICE says. That's sufficient, okay? Now,
I'm asking you as a judge, is that sufficient probable cause?
Doesn't even come close.
So why are we seeing ICE continuing to perform these kind of mass sweeps Now, to be sure, the president told us, he said, I'm going to get the worst of the worst. I'm going to get murderers, rapists, people who've committed serious crimes. I'm going to arrest them and I'm going to deport them. Surely they've done some of that, but they've also swept up a lot of other people in the process who are not guilty of anything other than possibly being in the country undocumented.
And here is where the system is failing, okay? Trump is a despot. He has visions of being a king or an autocrat or whatever, okay? Our forefathers anticipated this. Alexander Hamilton talked about it. He talked about the ill humors that may originate from society itself. People will disagree with me, but I think most will agree. Trump is truly an ill humor. And so what did the founders say we needed to protect against that? Alexander Hamilton articulated it very clearly in Federalist 78. We need an independent judiciary that will stand up and protect the people against ill humors that may emerge from society among the people themselves. So what we have now is a president who is truly an ill humor. He's acting with impunity, and the courts are supposed to, under the Constitution, stand up and prevent that.
Well, not just the courts, but we have 3 co-equal branches of government, right? We're supposed to have a Congress that is also supposed to function as a check on the power of the executive.
Well,
are they meeting that obligation?
No, sharing of powers. But I want to go back to this whole bulwark against ill humors. Mm-hmm. This is what's wrong right now. It's a mixed bag. The Supreme Court is not doing its job. We're told that. Some of the lower level federal courts are doing it. Of course, Trump thinks that he doesn't have to follow what they say, so he's acting with impunity. But if our society is to work, the courts have to stand up and show some backbone. And that's very hard to do when you have a Supreme Court. I know a number of the justices on the court. I've visited.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, we'll maybe get into that later.
Yeah.
But they aren't doing their job. And Congress is not either. See, and the founders visioned the Congress as the most powerful branch of government.
Because they were elected directly by the
right,
people.
directly from the people.
House of Representatives up for election every 2 years.
And they make the laws.
6.
They make the laws. But we have a majority, hopefully not lasting long, in Congress that just rolls over and plays dead in the presence of Donald Trump. They got to stand up, and they aren't doing it.
I want to go back to what you just said earlier, though, Paul, about the Supreme Court not fulfilling their role. Are you referring to specific decisions that they are making, such as the immunity decision last year, unlimited immunity for official acts, things such as that? Are there other particular
it's broader
cases?
Than that.
Explain that.
Well, they're rendering opinions. I mean, that was a broadly written opinion on presidential.
Which shocked a lot of people.
Yes, I mean, it basically gives the president carte blanche to act. But one of the things that is puzzling to people is why is the president scoring what appear to be so many victories? Well, one of the ways, it's very transformative. This is a big change from the past. The court is rendering summary opinions without a opinion, without a written opinion.
Without a written explanation.
No, they just and they're backing the they're either backing or overturning lower courts and allowing the president to really act willy-nilly, and it's just such a horrible.
So not having written opinions where judges explain their legal reasoning of how they came to a conclusion deprives the public of the ability to understand how the court came to its decision.
And it deprives us of, and maybe we'll get to this when we talk, accountability. I mean, the court just renders an opinion, doesn't explain why, and so what happens with that? The people start to lose faith in the judiciary. I mean, we talked about this earlier.
Let me mention that right now since you
Okay.
brought it up. September this year, Pew Research Center found favorable views of the U.S. Supreme Court at near a historic low. Half of Americans have an unfavorable view of the Supreme Court, while roughly as many view the court favorably. In August 2020, just 5 years ago, 70% of Americans at that time had a favorable view of the court. So why have so many Americans lost confidence in the Supreme Court, in your view?
Because it's acting with impunity, not explaining what it's doing. And, okay, I mean, that's one of the things that was very prominent in my thinking on the court, okay? My opinions had to make common sense. That's what the law is putting into codified form what society believes is common sense, okay? And I always wanted to make sure that the opinions did make common sense. And that's why I would write a lengthy opinion to explain why I believe that this opinion does make common sense in the context of our civil democracy. Now you have the court rendering summary opinions, no explanation, and even some of the written opinions don't make that much sense. And you know,
And the public sees this and can
Oh, yeah.
appreciate
See,
it, you believe?
most of the public, not all, but most of this public has a real sense of fair play. Because, you know, they can justify some of what they're doing, saying it's justice and whatever. And maybe not. You can justify some pretty bad acts in the name of justice. But there was always a final question that I asked me, is that, am I doing the right thing? I have to do the right thing in the context of our civil democracy. And that's what's turning people against the court.
Wow.
They don't think the court is doing the right thing with respect to their rights and what the Constitution requires.
I want to ask you on a slightly different topic here, too. It's all over the news these days. The U.S. has launched a series of military strikes against alleged drug dealers in boats in the Caribbean and in the Pacific Ocean. The Trump administration contends that we are engaged in an ongoing war. We, the United States, are engaged in an ongoing war against narco-terrorists who are shipping drugs into America that are killing Americans, and that this justifies the U.S. military killing people on boats in international waters. What are your thoughts about this?
Well,
is this legal or illegal?
Isn't he just trying to protect his fellow citizens from these evil people? Wait a minute. Do we know that these people are evil? Are these fishermen going out to catch fish, to feed their family?
We haven't, you know, in the process of destroying the boats and killing people in these waters, it also destroys the evidence, if there is any there, of the drugs they're carrying.
I know.
Well, I haven't seen the government producing evidence for us to see of what it was they seized. Isn't there also an option here that they could simply go out and arrest the people that they believe
Easily.
are in
They could
possession of
easily.
this?
They could commandeer the boats. I mean, there are, okay. Let's get to the bottom line with respect to Trump's personality. He's a bully. Bullies pick on people who they perceive are weaker than they are. He has a hard time dealing with China because, you know, bullies don't like to deal with some powerful entity like China. But Venezuela, Colombia, oh, they're just easy targets. So he builds up this idea, and it looks, the visuals look so good, and there are
These
people who
boats
like
blowing
it.
up, yeah.
We're blowing up these boats.
And we've killed over 40-some people, I believe,
know.
at last count. I want to ask you
But
a
wait,
really...
just before.
Yeah.
There's a much easier method to do it they could just intercept the boats. They
Arrest
see
them,
and arrest them.
bring them to the U.S. and under a U.S. court.
Yeah, but no, that's not the way
Well,
bullies work.
there was actually a case recently where the U.S. attacked, using a drone, attacked one of these ships, blew it up, but apparently 2 people that were on the boat survived, but the U.S. repatriated them to their country, which I believe in that case was Venezuela.
Yes.
So if they were actually narco-terrorists and drug dealers, doesn't it beg the question, why wouldn't the U.S. have arrested them and brought them to trial in a U.S. court?
Because they're killing wrong people who aren't violating the law. But understand, sir, what Trump says, we're using drones. And by using drones, we are not putting American military personnel's life at risk. So we don't have to get the authority of Congress. See, this is the insidious nature of what he's doing and what's going on. And it's, the law can be manipulated to appear like what you're doing is correct. That's why I always ask that question. Oh, okay, I've come with an opinion, but am I doing the right thing? And if you ask that question about Trump, they're not doing the right thing.
Well, to be sure, nobody condones shipping illegal drugs into the United States, but it's a matter of our reputation as a country that lives under the rule of law that is at stake here, isn't it? I mean, that's. Let me ask you this question. Related to this. Is it possible that people carrying out some of these attacks are in fact violating international law and could be held accountable in the future for violating, basically murdering people on the high seas?
That's why we have to go back to what I said earlier. Nuremberg. We got to take names. We got to record who's issuing these orders that's killing people with impunity.
Presumably, it's the president and his secretary of defense.
See, that's why I recommend the second movie, Judgment in Nuremberg. It was the second tier, and there's
the famous line, "We were following orders." Their defense was, "We were following orders that we were given that we believe were lawful orders."
Yes.
And actually, if I remember this part of the law correctly, Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, actually says that it is illegal to obey an unlawful order. That if the commander-in-chief or somebody else issues an order that's illegal and you carry it out, you can be held legally accountable for that. Isn't that creating a big problem for people in our military that are being asked to carry out this murder on the high seas?
Yes. There's a scene at the end of Judgment in Nuremberg. Burt Lancaster is the German Nazi judge who's on trial, and he's found guilty.
Yeah.
He wants to talk to Spencer Tracy character at the end. He's feeling badly about what he did, and he was seeking some sign of forgiveness from Spencer Tracy. And he explained, said that he really did not believe that what he was doing would come to what it did. Spencer Tracy responds, "Sir, it came to that at the first time you sentenced an innocent man to death." So what's happening now is these acts are compounding, but it's happening, it's the first time they do it, and they're responsible.
I heard somebody recently on television make a comment, I forget who it was, but it really stuck with me. They said countries don't slip into authoritarianism in an instant. It actually happens over time, and you see this slow erosion of civil liberties. You see suppression of free speech. You see suppression of dissent. This country, my goodness, this country was born in dissent.
Yes.
And when you see the government using its full power to go after people from all different walks of life because they appear to be an easy target, that creates some problems if we really believe in the rule of law.
Now you touch on a topic that's going to be too deep for us to get in today. Trump is not the cause of everything. Trump is the result of what you are speaking over a period of time. You had Mitch McConnell, who gave his middle finger to the Constitution when he said, we won't give Merrick Garland a hearing.
Yeah.
You
Who
had
was nominated by President Obama for a seat on the
Yes.
Supreme Court. Right.
Garland's record is pretty clear, so Mitch McConnell didn't even want to give him a hearing in my head's part. But there are a lot of Mitch McConnells in our government who are compromising on the fringe and doing things that have allowed it. So this has been happening. Now, I mean, it goes back. I mean, if you study the history of our country, it's not always as glorious as we would like to be. We had Charles Lindbergh, who was in favor of the Nazis, and the senators who backed him. You had Senator Joe McCarthy. You had the John Birch Society. There was always this undercurrent of people who were willing to take away rights. And what happened was we screwed up. We screwed up with the, and I put a lot of blame on former President Biden. He screwed up. He didn't do right for our country and created a vacuum where Donald Trump could slide in and the people who backed him could slide in again.
And ultimately, we have to remember, whether one likes it or not, the voters elected Donald Trump to the presidency twice. He
Yes.
got elected in 2016, and he won it again in 2024.
Never got a majority, you know.
No, but he won enough electoral votes to be legally elected, something that he denied his predecessor had done. We're down to about the last 2 minutes, Paul. As always happens, we start getting into the weeds on these issues and we run short. But I want to give you a few moments here to answer this question. And this is the ultimate question for this episode.
I don't know if I can handle the ultimate
We'll
question.
try.
Okay.
It seems as if the rule of law is under all-out assault to many people in our country
I agree
right
with
now.
that.
You agree. If that is the case, can we save the rule of law in America, and how are we going to do that?
Yes. Now, a lot of people disagree with me on this. I have talked to so many people that are in the depths of despair about the future of our country. But our founders anticipated people like Trump and the ill humors, and they institutionalized revolution. That's a radical statement from me, but it's true.
You're referring to elections?
You got
as
it
being-
exactly.
Elections being a revolutionary act that one party...
Where the people can speak. And so, if we're going to save the rule of law, the 2026 elections are very, very important. Now, I've talked with a lot of people who understand Washington, D.C. and how it works. The biggest one will be the House. And the biggest thing about the House will be, if the Democrats take over, they have the power of subpoena.
to
They can
investigate
bring
these
these
excesses.
people forward and try and hold them to account. You can anticipate they're going to stonewall and whatever. And I also think, and we're running out of time, but I'm fascinated by this whole Epstein thing.
Yeah, we're going to have to save that for another episode. Paul Anderson, former Minnesota Supreme Court Justice, as always, a pleasure to hear your opinions, your insight. Thank you for coming on Access to Democracy. You'll find more Access to Democracy episodes on our website at accesstodemocracy.com.
Hey, we have too much fun, you know.